is the Ultraviolette F77, India's first electric sport bike. Now you might think the keyword here is electric, and of course you are right. But since we are only doing a small first ride, the keyword we are focusing on is sport bike. So just how good a sport bike is the F77? So visually, this F77 doesn't look too different from the one we originally saw and rode in 2019, but underneath the skin, it's a whole different beast. Since they went from 3 smaller removable battery packs to a single massive fixed battery, the entire chassis and swing arm had to be re-engineered to handle the extra weight. Even the suspension had to be tweaked and retuned. Thankfully, this recon variant of the F77 we rode does get preload adjustability at both ends. But a curb weight of 207 kilos for a bike of this size is no joke. So our first experience with this F77 was on a fairly small and tight go-kart circuit in Bangalore. And honestly, I thought the weight was going to be a big hindrance. And if you're trying to move the bike with your feet or tip it around, yeah, the weight does show. But get the bike rolling and that weight just disappears. Even around the tight hairpin turns on the circuit, the bike felt very easy to steer, and that's because the engineers at Ultraviolette have got the balance just right. The CG is not too low nor is it too high, which means the bike doesn't feel heavy to steer nor does it feel too tipsy, and this balance is something that many ice makers also struggle with their bikes. Now you might need to put in a little bit of effort when you hustle the bike from corner to corner, but even if you manhandle it, the F77 doesn't put a foot wrong. Apart from the great chassis balance, some of this also comes down to the fantastic MRF tires which Ultraviolette says were developed specifically for the F77. And they are W rated. For the one place where you do feel the bike's weight is under braking. Now they've got the same brake setup as the new RC390, so brake feel is good. But bringing all this bike mass and rider to a halt quickly does take a lot of effort at the lever. And especially on a track like this, which has lots of hairpins and it's all stop go, you tend to use the brakes a lot, which means after around 5 or 6 laps, you do tend to get a bit of brake fade. Now this might not be an issue on fast flowing circuits or on mountain roads, but here on this track, the brakes do show their limitations. The other slight issue we felt while braking hard was that when the ABS kicks in, it feels a bit intrusive and the lever judder is quite high. Now this could be rather unnerving for a lot of riders. Ultraviolette needs to further improve the F77's ABS calibration to solve this issue. Now one way to reduce the load on the brakes is to increase the motor's regenerative braking. At the moment, the F77 has 3 levels of regen braking, and honestly, even in the highest mode, it doesn't seem to make a huge difference. But Ultraviolette says that they will introduce 10 levels soon via a software update. But while stopping is just about okay, the going is another matter altogether. Barring the Harley-Davidson Livewire, this is the most powerful electric two-wheeler that we have ever ridden. And while its peak power figure of 29 kilowatts, which is roughly a little under 40 horsepower, might seem commonplace for a bike in this segment, what makes this electric horsepower so impressive is the 95 Nm of torque available from the word go. At any speed, open the throttle and the F77 just goes, building speed very rapidly. And since there's no gearbox or engine RPM to worry about, you are never in the wrong gear or at the wrong speed. Surprisingly though, from a standing start, the F77 doesn't feel ballistic even if you are in the top ballistic riding mode. Now Ultraviolette says that this was a conscious choice because their customers didn't want jerky acceleration of the line. But if enough customers want that, well, it's an easy enough fix for Ultraviolette to add something like a launch control via a software update. But the best part is that this ballistic mode is usable from a full charge battery all the way down to 30% charge, which means you can be in ballistic mode for most of your ride and have a lot of fun. The other two modes, combat and glide, well, you'll be spending your time mostly in combat mode if you're riding in the city because that feels the most balanced. Glide mode, which is like eco mode for the F77, It's usable, but honestly the only time we think you're using it is if you're low on battery and trying to find a charger nearby. Now touching upon the electric aspects of this motorcycle, charging of course is a big concern, and by default Ultraviolette will give you with the bike this charger. This is 1.3 kilowatts, so that will full charge the bike from 0 to 100 in about 8 hours. So that's an overnight charge, not very convenient. If you want to charge faster though, you can optionally buy this more powerful charger, which is 3.3 kilowatts, and that will full charge the bike from 0 to 100 in about 4 hours. So that's much better. Also, Ultraviolette is going to set up their own charging network across the country, which will offer much faster charging speeds of almost 6 to 7 kilowatts. So that will be great if you want to go traveling with this bike. Thanks to the massive 10.3 kilowatt-hour battery pack, Ultraviolette claims an IDC range of over 300 kilometers. To be honest, we were having so much fun riding the F77 that we never bothered to check the battery discharge rate on our first ride. So while we can't verify Ultraviolette's claim just yet, we are reasonably certain that it should deliver well over 200 kilometers in the real world. Ever since we first laid eyes on the F77 back in 2019, it's always been a looker, and we're happy that this hasn't changed over the past few years. There are some new bits too, like the small vents on the side panels which channel air to cool the motor. And those little winglets aren't just for show. They not only help move air to the motor, but they also cover the little metal extrusions over the crash guards, which should mitigate some damage in the event of a fall. But these are not full-blown frame sliders, so don't expect them to completely save the panels in case of a fall. And speaking of panels, the whole bike is covered with a lot of plastics. Now most of these look very well finished and fit together quite well, but some of them do have some uneven gaps and don't sit flush, especially those around the rear grab rails. And the fork covers, while they look cool, we are afraid that any misalignment caused by a big bump might make them to crack or otherwise take damage. The mirrors are a slight pain point too. Again, they look excellent, but adjusting them is quite the task. Ultraviolette does assure us that they are working on these little quality issues with the suppliers, and the bikes which will reach customers shouldn't have any such problems. Overall though, there is no getting around the fact that the F77 is unlike any other motorcycle we have seen on our roads yet, thanks to its nearly fully fed design and pointy fork-mounted headlight.
Round is not scary, pointy is scary.
So while the F77 might look like a mix between a sport naked and a fully fed sport bike, the ergonomics actually are quite aggressive, almost like a proper sport bike. You do have a fair amount of lean towards bars, and the foot pegs are quite rear set. It's not as aggressive as the last gen KTM RCs or even the current Yamaha R15, but it does remind me of the current gen KTM RCs. So while it is aggressive, it is still usable, but riding it every day might not be everybody's cup of tea unless you get used to it. Now honestly, today's ride wasn't the best place to evaluate ride quality because the first half we spent on the go-kart circuit and the second half was at Nandi Hills. Both the times we had butter smooth roads. Although on the few bumps we did encounter, the front end felt quite nice, but the rear was a little bit firm. Not stiff mind you, but firm like a sport bike. Something you can definitely live with. What really surprised me though was the way the F77 handled mid-corner bumps. Now we didn't encounter any proper mid-corner bumps, but a couple of times while leaned over, I did run over some cat size, and the bike didn't put a single foot wrong anywhere. Now being a modern electric two-wheeler, the F77 has got all the requisite connected features, and you can check out everything it offers on your screen right now. While we didn't get to test any of these during our first ride, what we did use thoroughly was the 5-inch TFT screen, and we really liked it. Now this is not a touchscreen, but you control it using the left side switch cube. But the user interface is easy to read, extremely intuitive and super responsive. Something that can't be said for a lot of screens we have seen off late on other EVs. So there are still more questions to be answered about the F77. Does it deliver on its claimed range? How is it to live with every day? How does it handle traffic? Well, these are questions we can answer only once you get the bike in Pune for a proper road test. But today we need to answer one question, and that is it fun to ride? And the answer to that is hell yes. It is absolutely fun to ride, and honestly, and I can't believe I'm saying this, it's as much fun as a KTM RC or maybe even a BMW G310 or a Apache RR310. Of course, it doesn't have the raw visceral feel of a petrol-powered motorcycle,
But then think of it like moving from a book to a Kindle. I mean, it doesn't feel the same, but as long as you're having fun reading, as long as you're having fun riding, how does it matter what you're doing it on, whether it's electric or petrol powered? But there is a giant elephant in the room, and that is its price. The F77, even in its base variant, is very expensive. But one thing about electric bikes, don't let the ex-showroom price scare you, because the on-road price doesn't jump as high as it does for petrol-powered motorcycles. That said, it is an expensive motorcycle, one meant for early adopters and has a very niche market. It's not meant for the mass market. At this point, if you want a fast fun motorcycle that's also electric, the F77 is the only option and will be at least for the next 5 or 6 years. So while the F77 is far from a perfect bike and still has some flaws, if you want to go green and still have some fun, the only thing you can do is hop on and take off. Oops.